And away we go, back from a mini trip to Wyoming. Dave LaMont, Nooner with Dave LaMont, noon Eastern time, and hope you enjoyed Monday. Want to immediately give our thoughts to the Gulf Coast. And by our thoughts, my wife and I, to the Gulf Coast. It's going to take an unusual double hit from a couple of storms, one which is a little bit weaker, thankfully, but this could be one of these flooding issues, and I hope folks are preparing right now. I'm sure they are. Texas and Louisiana in particular look to be the targets of these storms. We know what that crap storm is like in South Florida. Fortunately for us, we're out of this one. We just have what I would call a 12-club wind today. Not a good idea to go out and play golf, but that's all, and we're grateful for that, but we're also thinking about you as well. It's a weird position to be in. When you live in an area that is affected by tropical weather, you feel a little selfish that it's not you, but you also realize that people are suffering who have gone through what you've gone through before, and you feel badly about that. Today's also, as many people are reminding us who live in South Florida, an anniversary that no one cared to remember, Hurricane Andrew, the storm that in 1992 just destroyed southern Miami-Dade County. And folks are putting up, some of the photos of the destruction, which looked like almost the cliche of bomb went off was not inaccurate when you think about that, to be very honest with you about that. So anyhow, let's get to work. Oh, wait a minute. We got one snob here. I'm trying to keep up with the comment page, and I have to do that on my phone. So you heard me double speak there. Very professional, very professional. All right, let's get down to some of the sports business. And I have to start with the guy that everybody in sports is pretty much talking about, at least for the day, and that's LUKA Doncic of the Dallas Mavs and what he did yesterday on half of an ankle. 43 points, 17 rebounds, 13 assists. Only Wilt Chamberlain has ever put up anything like that in his career. And Charles Barkley, I think, did 40, 15, and 10 once. That's the company that LUKA Doncic is rolling in at 21 years old. Now, I was a busy 21-year-old. I was graduating from the University of Miami. I was actually working at a radio station. So I did have some things that I thought were accomplishments, but these are a little bit different on a much larger stage and in a game that they absolutely had to win. Now, I'm proud to say that I kind of knew about LUKA before some people did, having had the advantage of having my son interning with the Mavericks on the court, working with players, particularly Boban Marjanovic, who's just an absolute joy. And my son says LUKA's a great guy. So if you're wondering if this success at 21 years old has gone to his head, it hasn't. Hopefully it never will. And obviously his skills as a player are unique. Now, everyone's doing the Larry Bird comparisons because those are two white guys. And that's not necessarily the right comparison right now. I think LUKA's a way better ball handler than Bird was. Bird, a better shooter. And I think they're equals as passers. They play differently. They're not really the same. If you want to look at LUKA as more of a Magic or LeBron type, that may make more sense. Remember, Magic developed a shot later in his career that was at least respectable. He was a terrible shooter early in his career. LUKA is an okay shooter, but he still gets points and volumes because he does take a lot of shots. LeBron, obviously a more dangerous player around the rim. I don't think he handles the ball as well as LUKA, but he's an excellent passer and strong rebounder and all of the above. And he's still the face of the NBA. But one day he won't be there, even though I think LeBron debuted in 1975. LUKA could end up being the face of the NBA, which I believe would be the first time that I can remember a European player would be the face of that league. I can't think of anybody else, and I might be leaving someone out, and it's not on purpose. But I'm telling you, this guy, and the thing that I love to watch about him is how he seems to come up with something out of nothing. And if you watch him, and if you have watched him, you'll notice he will dribble into an area where you think, well, what are you doing? And yet come up with either a pass to an open teammate or some kind of bizarre off-balance horse shot. He's that gifted. He's that talented. He is really that good. If he cuts his turnovers down in the next couple of years, did I mention he turned 21 in February in South Florida? Then he is going to be close to unstoppable. And if they can keep that team together, and of course, obviously injuries, the one thing that you can't control. And he managed to do it, by the way, without Kristaps Porzingis, his running buddy, his second most dangerous offensive player on the team, and a uniquely gifted player in his own right. The Mavs really are entertaining to watch. They don't pay a lot of attention to defense, and ultimately, I don't think they're good enough to go probably past the conference finalists if they get that far, because the Clippers ain't bad. But this story is a refreshing one. It's fun to watch him play. It's fun to watch that team play. They really embrace the style that is popular now. So all the best. Lots of fun to watch. Happened, thankfully, to be watching that thanks to free TV on the airplane. And the hilarious thing is that buzzer beater win about the second after we landed. So it was just unusual timing of all that. But it's a unique. He's a uniquely gifted player. My buddy Chris, a former basketball player. Whatever happened to him? Anyway, he's pointing out quite rightfully that Kawhi Leonard, who was in that game, is a tremendous player. But at 21, Kawhi Leonard was not what LUKA was. I don't even know, Chris, if Kawhi was in the NBA at 21. He might have been at San Diego State at 21 years old. But yes, you're right. But remember also, LUKA was a professional as a teenager in Europe. I don't mean 19, I mean 13. So he's had the expressions, he's had the experience, I should say, not the expressions, the experience of high-stakes basketball in Europe. And absolutely is very helpful now. Yes, this is his first NBA playoff series, and yes, I grant you it is a different deal. Well, this year it's a way different deal than we ever imagined, but I'm not sure. That series is dead even. And you know what? If you don't have that bogus KP ejection from game one, 3-1 Mavs, it's possible. It's possible. I'm not guaranteeing it. It's very possible. The Heat up 3-0 on Indiana, should be able to close that out today, And I wonder if the media will react about the Pacers getting swept as they have reacted about the 76ers getting swept. Holy crap. People are just eating the 76ers alive. Now, Ben Simmons wasn't around, and that certainly is a factor. Boston's a pretty good team. That's a factor. But the 76ers' way of putting their team together, which was intentionally spending several seasons losing at a high-volume level and then collecting draft picks, is being just openly ridiculed right now. And you do have to contrast that. I can only think in Miami of maybe 1 year where they kind of went on purpose, maybe two, but I think one for sure, ever since Pat Riley has been around, and to win a draft choice. Otherwise, the goal is we're going to try to win. We're going to try to get in the playoffs and see what happens. Now, the risk of that is being stuck in that 35 to 45 win area where you're boring, you don't draft anybody exciting, but it doesn't seem to affect Miami. They seem to be able to attract either the right pieces of the puzzle through trades or signings, or they draft well. Hello, Tyler Hero. And Bam. I got into a Twitter debate when Bam was drafted. Guy said, he's going to be bum out of bio. I'm going to take Pat Riley's word over yours. Looks like Riles has got a good player there. So those combinations have made the Heat competitive. And Eric Spoelstra is a guy who adjusts to whatever he works with and is, I think, a terrific coach. So Miami's an interesting team. Championship team, I don't know about that. They go through some darn dry spells that are absolutely unbelievable, and I think that's going to end up tripping them up in the long run. But are they entertaining? They're fun to watch. You never get cheated on effort, ever, with that team. And if anybody does cheat them on effort, there's a warm seat. Somebody else will come in off that bench, and that's how you do it in Miami. That's where you hear Heat culture. And although I'm so sick of culture as a word in sports, there you go. But the joy of people already firing the head coach before the team does it, already firing the general manager, yikes. Taking too much joy out of misery. I thought I was the only one who did that. I didn't expect to talk about Roger Goodell today. I was going to talk about how I'm having a very difficult time getting excited for football, NFL or college. I know you're going to be surprised to hear this, especially my friends who are watching, who are going to watch this later, but I'm a little bit of a pessimist. I know. Can't believe it. Nobody believes it when I say that. And the funny thing is I've had a lot of wonderful things happen to me in my life, more than bad things by far. But I do tend to lean toward pessimism. And I just am wondering about the viability of playing NFL and college. You saw the NFL had a run of tests that were positive that turned out to be wrong from one lab in New Jersey. So it shut down some camps. It caused some panic. Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills, their fine quarterback out of Wyoming, go Pokes, was one of the ones who popped positive, but it turned out not true. So that was a weird weekend for the NFL. You had the Earl Thomas situation getting into trouble, and the Ravens just cut a good football player. Somebody will sign him. Dallas is reportedly the favorite. But it was Roger Goodell who kind of stole the show. Emmanuel Acho, who played at Texas and was with ESPN for a while, left the network and is kind of, I think he's at Fox now, and he's got a YouTube show called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. So he has Roger Goodell on, and I give Goodell credit, by the way, for doing this. It's a YouTube show, and Roger Goodell and Emmanuel Acho start talking about Colin Kaepernick, and Goodell stunned me. They started talking about the approach the league had toward Colin Kaepernick several years ago when it first happened. And he said he wished he had listened to Colin Kaepernick's reasoning for kneeling sooner. And I'll read you the quote. "I wish we had listened earlier, Cap, to what you were kneeling about and what you were trying to bring attention to. We had invited him in several times to have the conversation, to have the dialogue. I wish we had the benefit of that. We never did. We would have benefited from that, absolutely." Now, why they didn't get together, that's on both of them, Kaepernick and Goodell. Quite honestly, they could have texted each other and probably gotten stuff done. Why somebody didn't pick up a phone and call I don't know. That's not actually, I'm deflecting. I shouldn't do that. The other thing that Goodell said, and I remember I said I'm trying to avoid politics on this show, but this is going to kind of skate that line a little bit, so you're warned. Goodell had mentioned that he had talked to some other players, and he said he regrets how the message in kneeling was misinterpreted. This is Goodell saying this. Quote, "It's not about the flag. The message here and what our players are doing is being mischaracterized. These are not people who are unpatriotic. They're not disloyal. They're not against our military. In fact, many of those guys were in the military, and they're a military family. What they were trying to do was exercise their right to bring attention to something that needs to get fixed. That misinterpretation in who they were and what they were doing was a thing that really gnawed at me." That's Roger Goodell. I would only say this. Where was that a few years ago? Now, the NFL got roasted and was going to get roasted no matter what, no matter which side you took. And they did get roasted. And they took a hit from every side because everybody had an opinion on it. If you stood with Kaepernick, you were anti-American. If you stood with people who were against the NFL allowing this to happen, then you were a fascist or whatever label they were using at the time. I don't even remember. So it's a fascinating debate, and it's still there. But for the commissioner to address this, I don't know what the fallout is going to be, if there's going to be much of any fallout or not. I will point out the New England Patriots just signed a player who used to be at the Naval Academy who had been out of football for 5 years. So if anybody wants to take a chance on Kaepernick, maybe the NFL is fixing the potholes in the road to allow that to happen. I'm sure there's plenty of owners who still want no part of it, and it's their right as they own the teams. So interesting. Very, very interesting. To Greg, I'm going to back up to LUKA for a second, who wrote, "That ankle was hurt right." It's not your ankle, Greg. Of course, you might be kidding too. But it's not your ankle. So that's an old Don Shula-ism, by the way. Quick Don Shula story before I go on to football. But and I wasn't around for this. This is before my time dealing with Don Shula, when I was a absolutely frightened 18-year-old, unable to breathe. Everything was sucked in as he approached our media area. Somebody asked him about Don Nottingham, who was a running back in the mid-'70s who had a broken jaw. And they were questioning Shula and said, "So, Coach, when is Nottingham going to be back?" Shula says, "Well, I don't know." And the reporter, and I don't know who the reporter was, "Well, Coach, it's been a few weeks." And Shula just looked at him with that face and goes, "It's not your jaw." So when it's injuries involved here, so Greg, it's not your ankle, and it's not my ankle. it looked bad. And when he tried to come back in game 3, and he just looked awful. So anyway, a lifetime of a performance. They ran the Indy 500 yesterday. Did you know that? And I don't mean to be sarcastic. Takuma Sato won his second Borg Warner Trophy. It's an unbelievable achievement just to win it once. He's won it twice now. But I watched some of the race, and, no fans. And it seemed like, and I was watching back and forth. I was watching Dustin Johnson win by 5,000 shots in golf. I was watching the Mavericks game, and I was watching the Indy 500. I just had bad luck on the Indy 500. Every time they were in yellow. Every time. And fortunately, the accidents were not serious. There's no fatalities. We can kind of joke about it. But it seemed like a very accident-prone race, at least when I was watching it. But it was bizarre. I had watched a little of NASCAR when they first came out with no fans. This is just weird. I mean, this is the biggest motorsport spectacle in the United States. I think even over Daytona. Sorry. And to see it that way, very odd. Very, very odd, to say the very least. But thankfully, we got out of it in one piece, and another worthy win for Sato, to say the least. All right. I had promised you an update on pandemic travel. That's why I didn't do the show Friday, because I was in Laramie, Wyoming. My youngest son there, if you've watched some of the stuff I put on Facebook, and thank you for the kind comments, is a junior at University of Wyoming now. He just moved in there a few weeks ago. He has 2 years of eligibility left, so it's important that he play this year. Hint, hint, hint. And it was our chance to do some mom and dad stuff, so my wife and I went up there. So let's talk about the travel experience. Airplane stuff first. I did not feel at all frightened flying inside the plane. Remember, you don't get on the plane, you get in the plane. Everybody was masked. The airline insisted. They repeated it several times, even when we were inside the plane. They went out of their way. We flew Southwest. So they did a very good job. I understand, I've read an article somewhere that flying is really not all that dangerous, for the spread of the virus. So I was never worried about that. I really wasn't. I followed all the precautions, only lowered my mask to drink a little water and move on. The experience of Laramie itself was mostly masked. It's fortunately Wyoming, although I think they're bumping up a little bit, but Wyoming has not been hit that hard. Laramie is not a very populous city. It is a college town surrounded by some old-looking industries that may not even be around anymore. A very, very cool little place. We had a great time. But as the students moved in, as school starts virtually on Monday, boy, that was weird, walking around the campus, just taking a look at the sites and not seeing anybody on move-in day, like the dorms. I don't know where these guys are coming in from. Maybe this is off-campus stuff. But that was weird. I expected to see, tons and tons of people moving in. Not the case. That was kind of sad. So we go into there's an area downtown Laramie, which is a bunch of little restaurants and some very nice shops. And the mask policy there was, let's say, mostly consistent. At one point, we were in a arts and craftsy type store, and we were smelling things. And obviously you can lower your mask. And I finished, and I walked about 5 steps, and the woman behind the counter said, "Sir, could you raise your mask?" Oh, sorry, I did. Another arts and crafts store in the same area had a cluster of 6 people around the cash register, 0 masks, including the woman who I think was in charge of the store. We didn't stay long. Probably cost her some business, at least from our wallets. Friday night, students are starting to roll into town, drive through downtown looking for a place to eat. Sure enough, here's a chicken wing and burger and beer kind of place. 8 or 9 students clustered close together, no masks. But I would say this for the people who are running the restaurants, the coffee shops, all that, mask. Enforcement, let's just say Saturday night at a place that I would equate to a local version of a Longhorn Steakhouse. There were the 3 of us wearing our masks, waiting to be seated as it takes longer now to bus tables and move things along. 8 other people in the same waiting area, Zippo masks, not a one. Now, I happen to be pro-mask, and they have their reasons, as I have my reasons. To me, the most frightening place, in a lot of ways, was the airport experience. Much as I love you, National Rental Car, Sunday, looked like Thanksgiving weekend as they wedged people into the buses to go from the rental car to the terminal. Despite the fact there's a little sandwich board sign about yay big that mentions due to the pandemic or COVID or whatever they used, we're going to be limiting capacity. Well, limiting capacity must mean cutting the standees down from 8 to 3, because I was one of 3 people standing on the bus. So that kind of goes against the whole social distancing phenomenon. But it was the airport that drove me mad. It's this. And someone's got to explain this to me. Okay. Mask. That's a little crooked, but anyway. Someone explain this to me. Anybody? Do you know how many noses I saw this weekend in airports especially? And people were not, having a sandwich or drinking a coffee. They're just walking around like this. Now, if they're trying to tell me it's difficult to breathe, I get it. I do. But you know what? I spent a lot of time like this weekend. And by the way, it was smoky as hell because of all the wildfires out west. I didn't feel the need to do this until I got to my car, and then I would just take the thing off. In my book, if you're going to be this, whatever the word is, just don't wear it. Just don't wear it. You might as well. It's a joke. This bothered me more, I think, strangely, than the people who didn't even bother wearing masks, because they may have their reasons, political reasons, pride reasons, whatever it is. At least they're consistent. This is half-assed. Do it or don't do it. I had to get that off my chest. That had been really bothering me for quite some time. So that's enough of that. Otherwise, I'm okay with the travel. Hotel's fine. None of that stuff. I don't know how much I'm going to be seeing airports and all that again. Huge mystery. But I have to say, in general, everybody seems to be on their game. In general. So let's close things out with a little look at saving the English. Oh, you know what? One more thing. And this for my bowling friends and fans out there. News from Australia that Jason Belmonte, I guess, had to leap 15 different hurdles to get permission to leave Australia to come to the U.S. to bowl. Well, he got it. And that's a huge boost for the PBA. The guys who have been on the tour, who have been on the few shows that have been had lately, this is going to enhance things. It's going to be more difficult, obviously, because I'm sure Belmo's been practicing, but it's good for bowling to have the number one guy in the sport, the number one attraction, join an already deep and talented roster of great bowlers that we already have out there. So it's good news. What events are going to be there? I mean, one of the most fun events, even though there's no tour title involved, is the PBA League, and that's been moved from Portland, Maine, down to the Washington, D.C. area, and no fans will be permitted. Now, that's a shame. It's understandable, but it's a shame. The atmosphere at Portland, and listen, I've been fortunate in my career to be in a lot of really cool atmospheres in basketball, the NBA and college, the NFL and college football. And I would rate that little atmosphere there at BOPO, at Bayside Lanes, to be among the very best I've ever been around. Anywhere, any sport. So that's going to be missed. And I'm not, probably wasn't even going to be there, but nevertheless, I've loved the last 3 years there. So I'm confident 2021 will start bouncing back in a big way in all sports, and bowling certainly being one of them. So happy to see Belmo back. I'm sure the other guys will welcome him and then try to kick his ass, and that's the whole point of it all. That's what competition's all about. All right, I'm going to do an announcer say the language again, because I did the thing early in this run about MAC conference, and somebody wrote on Facebook once the SEC conference and how redundant. It's just, come on, man. Have an IQ above 51. But another thing my fellow announcers do, and I've done it, but I've banned it from my vocabulary the last few years. And it's a football term that drives me a little crazy. Well, I think they're on the 6-inch line there, or they're looks like it's the half-yard line. If you look at a football field, and I'm sure we all have, there is no 6-inch line. there is no half-yard line. There is a 1 yard line, a 2, a 3, and so on. But there is no line that designates 6 inches or 9 feet or whatever. Just say they're a half yard away. Just say, hey, 6 inches away from a touchdown here. That's what you say. You don't invent something that's not there. So in the future, anybody here who's a football announcer at any level, high school, college, whatever, pee-wee, there is no half-yard line. Doesn't exist. You good? Good. I was going to talk today about fantasy football. Relax, I'm not. But I'm going to talk about it tomorrow on unless Roger Goodell says something else that surprises me. I'm going to talk about it this week sometime because the impact of the bizarre situation with the NFL and with fantasy sports, I think is something that's worth talking about, and I have a reason for this. But I'm going to save that for tomorrow on the Almost Daily Dave at 10 a.m. That'll do it. Glad to be back home. Thinking about you, Gulf Coast, particularly Texas and Louisiana, and hope everybody has a wonderful time. Thank you for tuning in. I certainly appreciate your comments. And yes, Matt, I did offer up a get off my lawn. It's true. I did. The mask thing was very good off my lawn. Thanks for the comments. Don't forget, subscribe, YouTube, free. Follow on Twitter, Instagram. Also, remarkably cheap. I'll see you Tuesday. Bye.